For all these reasons, Mr. Shoba, I am enjoined by the statute to apply the ordinary sentence for an offence of this nature. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison, unless the parole authorities consider you fit for release in the fullness of time.
On June 8, 2020, a municipal worker stumbled upon a horrifying sight. A woman's body, 8 months pregnant, hanging from a tree in a secluded veld near Durban Deep in Rudeport, South Africa. The gruesome scene suggested that she had done it to herself at first glance, but something didn't add up. As the police looked closer, she had stab and shot wounds that indicated this was done by someone else. Just hours before, the 28-year-old Segofatso Pule had vanished after visiting her boyfriend, but she never made it home. Meanwhile, the boyfriend, Ntuthuko Shoba, remained silent as the story spread, but it wasn't long until his silence would reveal a horrifying truth to everything. What wasn't immediately clear was that this tragedy was the result of a carefully orchestrated plan, all because Segofatso refused to have an abortion. And beneath the surface of this staged death lay secrets far darker than anyone could have imagined. This is the life and death of Segofatso Pule. Segofatso was born in 1992 and raised in Meadowlands, Soweto, by her aunt after the devastating loss of her parents. Her early life was marked by resilience and warmth. She grew up in a close-knit household and remained deeply committed to her family, especially her younger sister, who depended on her after her parents' passing. She attended high school in Soweto, where she was known for her vivacious energy and distinct sense of style. Her passion for beauty and creativity naturally led her to work as a makeup artist at a MAC Cosmetics boutique, where she quickly established herself as both talented and dependable. Segofatso dreamed of moving into marketing. She saw it as a way to blend her love for aesthetics with ambition, and she pursued it with quiet determination. Her artistry wasn't just a profession, it was how she expressed her independence, her dreams, and her ability to uplift others. Those around her often spoke of how she brought light into every room and how her selflessness extended to anyone in need. But just as her professional life was beginning to take shape, the shadows of her personal life began to grow. That darkness would begin with her meeting a 31-year-old man named Ntuthuko Shoba. Shoba had known Segofatso since high school, but it wasn't until 2018 that they rekindled their connection and began a romantic relationship. At first, everything seemed promising. Friends noticed how Segofatso smiled more, spoke warmly of her new partner, and seemed hopeful about their future together. The relationship brought a kind of joy she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of stability and companionship she longed for. But beneath the warmth and joy, a storm was quietly gathering, one that would soon shatter everything. It began when she became pregnant not long into the relationship. The timing was unexpected, but Segofatso believed that love could weather uncertainty. What she didn't know was that Shoba had been keeping a secret. He was already engaged to another woman named Rosette. Fearing that the pregnancy would expose his double life, Shoba pressured her to terminate the pregnancy. Segofatso, torn between her convictions and the growing pressure, ultimately agreed to an abortion. The emotional toll was immense, and she bore it in silence, never knowing how far the deception would go. By the end of 2019, Segofatso found herself expecting again, but unlike the first time, her mind was made up. She refused to go through the agony of abortion once more. Despite the tensions brewing in her relationship, she clung to the hope that this child would be a turning point, a change at something better. What began as hope gradually became a quiet, exhausting struggle. Shoba reacted with chilling inconsistency. At times, he offered shallow reassurances, promising to support her. Other times, he flatly denied that the child was his. He never joined her for doctor visits, skirted serious conversations, and distanced himself further with each passing week. Their bond fractured, leaving Segofatso isolated and burdened, carrying not just a child, but the growing weight of betrayal. Then came the unraveling truth. Shoba was still planning to marry another woman. Rosette, the fiancée, hidden in plain sight. His double life was no longer rumor but fact, and the depth of his betrayal left Segofatso trapped between her growing hope for motherhood and the slow, choking realization that she had been cast aside. Her world darkened, and the walls began to close in. What followed was a slow, disturbing unraveling. Segofatso's days began to feel heavier, clouded with uncertainty. She found herself walking on eggshells, never quite sure how Shoba would act. His moods changed without warning, and his growing emotional distance left her confused and alone. As weeks turned into months, her sense of safety eroded piece by piece. By early 2020, that quiet unease had transferred into something darker, an invisible pressure that soon would erupt into something unthinkable. On the evening of June 4th, 2020, Segofatso disappeared without a trace. The last thing that her family knew was that she had gone to see Shoba in his house in Florida on the Westland Rand district after he had invited her to go shopping for their unborn baby. But what her family didn't know was that it was the last time that they would see Segofatso alive. She was expected to return home that evening, but she never did. From that moment on, her family knew something was definitely wrong. They immediately searched for her for days, in hopes of her being found safe and sound, but they couldn't find any clue of where she could be. Unbeknownst to them, something horrifying was discovered 7 kilometers away from their hometown in Meadowlands. On the morning of June 5th, 2020, a group of residents from Durban Deep in Rudaport stumbled upon something beyond horrific. There, in the stillness of an overgrown field, they found the lifeless body of a heavily pregnant woman hanging from a tree. Blood streaked down her belly, from her chest to her bare feet, painting a chilling picture of what had happened. The lifeless body was shot in the chest, which ultimately claimed her life. But there was one problem. The people who discovered her did not recognize her. Panicked and overwhelmed, they began making frantic calls to friends and neighbors, trying to identify who she was. When no answers came, the men did what they thought might help. They took photos and videos of the scene and circulated them online in hopes that someone, somewhere, would recognize her. As disturbing as it was, one witness later explained that the footage was shared to help find her family. The image that would go viral, a young woman's body, suspended unnaturally in broad daylight, marked the beginning of a case that would unravel into one of South Africa's most haunting stories of betrayal and gender-based violence. And it would not be long until the viral image would reach Segofatso's family. On June 8, 2020, one of her family members was scrolling through Facebook when they came across a viral post about a woman who was hanged and shot to death. At first, it was like other cases of murder, but something about this post was personal. It didn't take long for them to recognize the identity of the murdered woman in the post. It was their missing Segofatso. The moment Segofatso's family saw the now viral post, they were gripped with horror. There was no doubt in their minds. She had not taken her own life, but the wheels of justice turned slowly, and at first, there was no confirmation that what they believed was true. Yet soon enough, what started as suspicion would erupt into a chilling criminal case. The discovery sent ripples of outrage across South Africa, a country already reeling from rampant gender-based violence. The image of Segofatso, young, pregnant, and brutally killed, ignited a national cry for justice. Online, the hashtag #JusticeForSego quickly spread, transforming public grief into a determined movement. Authorities launched a swift investigation. The case was too disturbing, too public, and too symbolic of a deeper crisis in the country to ignore. Segofatso had left Shoba's apartment and was never seen again. Yet he claimed she had taken a regular Uber and left unharmed. At first, the police had little to work with, but then came a breakthrough. When investigators reviewed CCTV footage from Shoba's apartment complex, they saw something that sent chills down their spines. In the dim footage, Shoba was seen calmly walking Segofatso, heavily pregnant and visibly uneasy, out of the building and toward a waiting vehicle. What neither she nor the camera could see clearly at that moment was the true identity of the man behind the wheel. He wasn't just a driver. He was a hired killer. This single detail began to unravel everything. The vehicle was traced to Muzikaziza Malepane. Once in custody, Malepane cracked what he revealed would change the course of the case. As the investigation gained momentum, public pressure mounted. Shegofatso's murder had already gripped the nation, and now, with a confession from the hitman in hand, attention turned toward building a case strong enough to convict the mastermind. In January 2021, Mutsi Kayiza Malepane stood before the court and pleaded guilty to murder. He confirmed what many had already begun to suspect, that Tutuko Shoba had orchestrated the killing from the very beginning. Malepane admitted to being offered 70,000 rand, a price placed on the lives of both Shegofatso and her unborn child. What made the confession all the more disturbing was how methodically the plan had been set into motion. Shoba had initially asked another friend to kill her, offering him 7,000 rand. When the first man declined, Shoba increased the price tenfold and found Malepane. What followed was weeks of calculated coordination. Shoba had even concocted a fake job interview to lure her into a trap, but Shegofatso sensed something was wrong and never showed up. Still, Shoba persisted. He altered his strategy. Instead of a job interview, he invited her over for what appeared to be a peaceful evening about baby shopping. He knew she trusted him just enough, and it worked. Shegofatso visited his apartment in Florida, unaware that it would be the last time she would be seen alive. After her visit, Shoba walked her to her car, a vehicle he had arranged to be driven by Malepane himself. Shegofatso, visibly uncomfortable, hesitated before getting in, but the killer reassured her. He told her he would drive her home safely. The next few hours remain some of the most chilling in South African crime history. Malepane drove her not home, but to an isolated field in Nordgesig. There, under the cover of night, he shot her in the chest. And then, in a final act of deception, he strung her body from a tree to make it look like she had taken her own life. But his staging was sloppy. There were too many inconsistencies. The wound on her chest, the location of the hanging, the absence of any tool or evidence that she had done it herself. The autopsy confirmed what police suspected. Shegofatso had died from a gunshot wound, not by hanging. She had been dead before her body was suspended. Malepane, perhaps burdened by guilt or frightened by the weight of the law, cooperated with prosecutors. He gave them the burner phones, revealed how Shoba planned it all, and even explained his role step by step. His testimony would become the cornerstone of the case. As the court proceedings unfolded, the details were nearly unbearable. WhatsApp messages between Shegofatso and Shoba painted a picture of emotional manipulation.
Hi Shoba, I hope you're fine. Listen, can you talk because I want to call you. I want to talk to you about, okay? I guess you want to say there's something I want to talk to you about. My response is, in a meeting, Nana, we'll call you when I'm out. And then she says, okay, please.
And then after that, there appears to be a voice note.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
From her or from you?
That's from her.
Then what is the response to the voice note?
Oh snap, yo, that's tricky. I remember but I guess then we should go do the test together as second confirmation. Wow, this can't be good.
She pleaded for his support, urged him to show concern for their child, and questioned his growing indifference. Shoba often responded with vague promises and hollow reassurances, masking his true intent with carefully chosen words. In court, Malepane was asked why he shot her instead of following through with the original plan to make it look like a suicide. He admitted that he couldn't stomach hanging her while she was still alive, so he pulled the trigger first. A bullet ended her life, and that of her unborn baby. Meanwhile, Shoba maintained his innocence. Even in the face of mounting evidence, he insisted that he had no part in the crime. But the CCTV footage, the testimony, the burner phone records, and Malepane's cooperation told a different story. In March 2022, Shoba was found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The judge saw no room for leniency. On the day of sentencing, the courtroom fell into heavy silence. Shoba was handed a life sentence. There would be no parole, no second chance.
For all these reasons, Mr. Shoba, I am enjoined by the statute to apply the ordinary sentence for an offence of this nature. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison, unless the parole authorities consider you fit for release in the fullness of time. The court will adjourn.
The judge stated firmly that the nature of the crime warranted the harshest penalty. Outside the courtroom, emotions ran high. Segofatso's family embraced, sobbing in relief that justice had been served. But no sentence could ever undo what had been done. Segofatso was gone.
Emotions ran high outside the Johannesburg High Court as convicted murderer has been sentenced to life imprisonment by the acting judge, Stuart Wilson. Ntutuko Shoba was found guilty of premeditated murder for the death of his girlfriend, Segofatso Pule, and their unborn baby. She was 9 months pregnant when she was found hanging in Rooiport in 2020. Today's sentence has been hailed as a victory for gender-based violence victims.
I think the most beautiful words today that I ever heard were, for the rest of your natural life. Nothing can ever change after that. Nothing can ever change. This is such a huge victory for the foundation, for South Africa, for a whole lot of other lives who never even got the day of justice, who never even got to see the day in court.
Her murder became a symbol, a grim reminder of the horrors of gender-based violence in South Africa. In life, she had been vibrant, loving, and hopeful. In death, she became the face of a movement. Her story was not just about one man's betrayal. It was about a society grappling with the epidemic of violence against women. It was a wake-up call, a call to action. Segofatso deserved better. Her child deserved better. And now, the country must confront the systems and silences that allowed this to happen. With Shoba's conviction, it seemed that justice had finally been served. But the story of Segofatso Pule did not end in the courtroom. Her death left a permanent scar on the national psyche, becoming one of the most talked about cases of gender-based violence in South Africa. In the weeks following the sentencing, public discussion turned toward accountability and the societal conditions that allowed such a tragedy to unfold. Segofatso's name was chanted as both a lament and a battle cry. Her face appeared on murals, posters, and social media timelines. She had become a symbol of the fight for justice and the need for systemic change. To this day, Segofatso's family continues to advocate for tougher laws and better protections for women. They do so not just for her, but for the countless others who suffer in silence. We ask you, the viewers, what do you think could have been done to prevent this? What does this case say about the systems that are meant to protect us, and how can we make them better? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Share the story so that Segofatso Pule is never forgotten. And if you or someone you know is in a controlling or abusive relationship, please know that there is help. Speak up, reach out. Lives depend on it.